With that, let's bring in Paul Mauro, retired NYPD inspector, attorney, Fox News contributor, and host of the weekly rap sheet on Fox Nation, who is live from Tucson, Arizona with the latest. Paul.
So, hello, Emily. Yes, I'm on the ground here. We're all still trying to process this latest thing that came in from TMZ. And look, when you consider the atmospherics around this thing, we've had a couple of other emails that didn't pan out that very well might have been hoaxes, unscrupulous people trying to pile into this thing. You have to say to yourself, with this latest one, asking for a Bitcoin worth about $66,000, when the reward is $50,000 and you could come forward and be a hero, you'd have to ask yourself what the motivations are here. Looks to me like could be a hoax, certainly. You have to admit that possibility, but it could be genuine. They gave reportedly an email address to facilitate communication. You can bet that the authorities are scraping very hard at that. Either way, it's somebody that should have just come forward if they have genuine information. So right now, this is a pertinent investigative lead, but I'm not sure it's the most important one.
Paul, Bill Hemmer, and thanks for being here again with us today. There are numerous details in the video that came out yesterday afternoon. I mean, you yourself, you ticked them off on your X feed, one after the other after the other. I was convinced that we wake up this morning early and we'd have a suspect in custody, and that has not been the case. Given that, Paul, where do they go next? Do they wait for the public to give them the best possible lead, or do you think they're on to something behind the scenes?
Well, they certainly know more than we do, Bill, obviously, because, you know, they were crunching at this Google data to reconstruct the video now for 10 days, we heard. And yet none of us knew that was going on. We thought that the video was going to be a dead end. And as we talked about earlier today, the digital footprint that the Nest camera left was able to be reconstructed into imagery. So one of the things I would think they almost certainly are doing is going at other cameras that might have picked him up, not only at the location, because she reportedly had a series of other cameras, but maybe even the neighborhood stuff that they think they might have gotten other information that using the same technique, you could potentially reconstruct some worthwhile video. The other thing I would think you'd be going at very, very hard here is what he's wearing. I've seen some reporting where the sweatshirt he is wearing looks pretty identified. You know, I don't want to be sort of conclusive about that because I haven't seen both of them up close, obviously. But if I got there, you can bet the task force has gotten there. So you look at that, you look at the backpack, maybe the gloves, maybe the shoes. There are a number of commonalities there. If you put them all together, you can say, well, who's bought all of these things in the last, whatever, 3 months, 6 months in the Tucson area, maybe the whole state? And if that sounds like a needle in a haystack, let me just remind our viewers that the D.C. bomber case, where that alleged bomber put a device outside both the RNC and the DNC, Bureau was able to reconstruct that case to the extent that they got the perp's purchase history for the batteries because the devices didn't detonate, and they were able to get where he bought the batteries, and that was a significant break in that case, and after 4 years, they ultimately got that one.
All right, bringing in your co-host, Donna Rotuno here. Donna, so as we reported, there was a person that was picked up and questioned and then released, and the question is that encouraging in that there is information visually from these images that are leading to a wider net or a specific net, or does that feel like a step back in that obviously that person was not the right identified person?
Well, we saw that at the Brown University shooting, right? They brought someone in initially that was not the proper perpetrator, right? But that person may have given information. Here, it doesn't seem like this individual had a lot of information to give. What I found most interesting about the raid, and Paul, you may want to weigh in on this with me, but the search of the house was the fact that the police had to have some information that made a court feel like signing a warrant for his home was a warranted thing to do. And so given the fact that they went into that house, I'm wondering if maybe they found a car that matched a license plate at the Circle K, because they had gone to the Circle K to get the recordings that they had, and they asked for specific times. They asked for, men on camera. So I'm wondering if maybe he had stopped at that Circle K. And if we look at the visual of the person that goes up to Nancy's door, from a body type, height, weight, you know, they're able to make those comparisons. You look at the archway and the door, you can see how tall someone maybe is. You can look at the tiles on the floor. You can kind of figure out shoe size. So maybe from that demographic, they were able to determine that this person stopped at the Circle K, and that's how they got to him. But it doesn't seem like there was much more from that. But what I'm hoping is that that evidence is going to lead to others that put us in the same boat where they have more people to go and talk to.
Yeah. Donna,
yeah, I mean,
Paul,
it could definitely
Donna,
be the case.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it could definitely be the case. They got probable cause. I haven't seen the affidavit. I'm trying to get a hold of it. All I would add to that is you have to have more than somebody saying, hey, I think I recognize that guy's walk. You're not going to get a search warrant of a home, especially since he was kind of guesting there. He's living with his in-laws. You know, legally, you had to have enough to get in there and to scrape that house. So I think, Donna, you're right. Whether it's a Circle K, I don't know. None of us do. He's a DoorDash delivery guy, supposedly, so maybe he was in the area of the house at a time that's kind of odd. Maybe he had done a search looking for the house because he said it's possible that he had delivered there. So maybe they say, okay, he searched for the address of the house. He was there at 3 in the morning for some reason, or in the vicinity of. Somebody gave us this tip. That's how we got onto him. So, you know, or the car tripped a license plate reader. If I had to guess, it's going to be a few factors like this. Some of this digital dust that we talk about that people leaves with a tip potentially that got them onto him. And ultimately, as of now, what looked very good last night, especially when we had the information they were supposedly bringing him back here to Pima County to debrief him in the jail, the local jail. You don't do that unless you're about 9/10 there. That turned out to not be accurate. They cut him loose down in that town by the border. And so that one, as of now, seems to have washed out.
Paul, immediately when we got these images, extraordinary images yesterday on our show, I said, you know, this is an outside camera. What about the inside cameras? I went back and read Kash Patel's statement, and let me read to you 2 sentences because I caught on to something on a second read. He says, we're working closely to continue to recover any images or video footage from Nancy Guthrie's home and that may have been lost, corrupted, or inaccessible due to a variety of factors, including the removal of recording devices, plural. Up until this point, we only knew about the outside camera that had been removed, but he refers to plural removed devices. Do you have any indication of, 1, if they're going to get this indoor camera footage, and 2, whether any of those cameras had been removed?
I haven't heard about a second Nest camera being removed, but here's something that I haven't heard speculated on, but since you're asking that question, I don't think they have the actual physical Nest camera. I could be wrong, but I haven't heard anything about that being recovered. Here's why I go to that. Nest cameras operate off of batteries. They're not hardwired. That's why he just was able to pull it out, which means after he pulled it out, it's still reporting to the Wi-Fi, which is how they reconstructed the video that we've all seen. Understand what goes on there. It's not film. I know we think it's film. It's bytes. It's digital information. It's code. And then what happens is it goes to the Wi-Fi. It goes from the Wi-Fi to Google, and Google translates it into something that looks like a movie. If you pay the subscription, you can get to see it. If you don't pay, it stays as code. So that's why it took 10 days. Google had to take that code, which luckily was still in the Wi-Fi. That's my judgment. That's where they got it, because it didn't overwrite because she wasn't there, so there wasn't a lot of activity. So they were able to get to enough of that code. You notice it's not perfect, but enough of it had survived that they could create what we saw. So my hope is that what they're doing now is, if the thing kept reporting, the perpetrator may very well have taken it in the car. And you may get something out of that, including audio. And that could be a break, because these things do pick up audio. So maybe you get his voice, maybe you get something else. I'm sure they're scraping very hard at all of this.
Paul, it's Harris. You know, you're kind of pointing to something that a former homicide detective told me last hour on the Faulkner Focus. Chris Anderson said he was looking for those points that showed that this guy perhaps was not as sophisticated as people might have initially thought, or, you know, maybe those Bitcoin demands early on might not have been this guy because he doesn't seem that sophisticated about technology for some of the reasons that you're talking about. But then he went to something rather basic. He said, look at the way he's wearing the gun. He said you don't wear a gun on your stomach because it's easy for somebody to grab that and use it against you. Talk to me about the aspect of why all of that would matter about whether or not he was sophisticated in what he's doing and how easy or hard that makes it to catch him.
You know, and this is really supposition on my part, but there's something about this guy, the way he moves, how casual he is. He's entirely unconcerned. That I get a feeling of very sort of low functioning. And this is why I say that. Not only is he unconcerned in a situation where he should be highly pressured, but he does that thing with the plant, which makes zero sense. You know, who picks up a plant to try to obfuscate the view of a camera? Even if he had taken a handful of dirt, which there's no shortage of down here, and smeared it on the lens, that makes more sense to me. But he takes a plant, he starts, I mean, how would you even affix a small plant to the exterior of a Ring camera, a Nest camera? So that alone strikes me as very, very off. And of course, somebody who would do this is off by definition. And so when it comes to the gun, the weight of gun, I know there's been a lot of speculation. It looks like he's got a semi-automatic handgun, but it's in a kind of holster that looks like it would be for maybe a revolver. He's got it in the front. And then we see the images where he doesn't seem to have it at all. So he took it off. I guess he left it in the car or something. So, yeah, I don't know. I've heard from people down here that apparently there's a thing with some gangbangers, and I don't want to start any internet rumors or anything, that sometimes they keep it on the left side so that when they're driving, they can reach across and grab it. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in any of that, but I do agree with the homicide detective that this guy is not some arch criminal. This is not the James Bond. What concerns me is that he went in with a packed knapsack.
Yeah.
You don't, if you're a burglar and it's a burglary gone bad, you leave with that kind of knapsack. You don't go in. What's in that knapsack?
Paul, final question for you for this segment. Arizona is known for its sort of strength of the privacy laws. And are there any intersects between that and using, for example, facial recognition technology as best that they can with this individual wearing the mask? Are you running into anything like that there on the ground as law enforcement works to identify this individual using whatever type of eye-in-the-sky technology exists there in Arizona?
Yeah, very interesting question. Look, you're going to get, as we saw last night, you're going to get search warrants, and you're going to get them fast. So if you're bumping into any proper, I'm not saying they're improper, but any of the legal strictures that are in place here to guard privacy, then your recourse is to get to a judge, maybe a federal judge. It's not clear to me, by the way, who did the search warrant last night, the state or the feds. I'm trying to get the warrant, as I said. But you're going to get the legal process you need from a judge in a circumstance like this, because remember, she is still missing, and there's that added pressure of not only getting the bad guy, but getting Nancy home.
All right, Paul Mauro, thank you. We will, of course, be talking to you shortly.